Hello and welcome. I'm Shadow of Shadow Gaming, bringing you episode 29 of Programming with Shadow. In this lesson, we're going to be picking up where we left off last time with our registration simulation. So, in this day, we're going to be working on the user interface a little more and start building out the actual options, maybe even get to the simulations. Let's go ahead and begin. So, one thing for full disclosure, you're going to notice it's the same time as last time. This is being recorded shortly after the last video, so just keep it so everything should be fresh in my mind, even if it in my mind in this case. So go ahead and keep on going. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add us another helper here. We'll see how we use this one here in a minute. We're going to say static string get line from keyboard string prompt. So console.write prompt. The reason we're going this route is that we're going to do this a couple times. So let's do this. So we'll say copy this part. Over here, let's make alternate color visible. Let's do private or public const. Sorry about that. Came up so quickly I didn't get it blocked. Primary color equals cyan. Now let's make those adjustments. So now let's come over here. So do this one too. I probably don't need that one, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we'll say equals menu dot background color. Whoops, wrong one. Menu dot background color. Menu dot primary color. We can do that one more time here, and let's do public const console color error color. Console color dot red. There, that gets us rid of some stuff. So let's clean up. So here we don't have to worry about the alternate color anymore. We can just say alternate color. And here, instead of that, we can just say primary color. Same thing down here. Probably should change this to red. Let's not do that. Let's let the default. I was thinking of changing it. The problem is once you throw, you're not going to be able to change it without catching it on the other side. I don't know if I want to do that. We may come back to that eventually. I'm not sure. Remove the original color. We'll make this primary color. Do that anywhere else here? No. Here we can remove this line. Make this menu.error color. This may not be a good way to do this. I'm not sure. To me, it feels like it's probably in a good spot, but one of them it may look at it for a little bit and decide it's not. Okay, that brings us to here though. So prompt, and we'll say console dot foreground color equals menu dot alternate. We're going to set the alternate just like before, and we're going to do string string, we're going to handle, or I say handle, we're going to throw an exception if we get it null. Equals console.readLine null coalescing operator, throw new exception, input cannot be null. Return user input, and we're good. So we'll see how we use that here in just a second. So let's come back up to the switch statement up here. Tell you what, let's do this. Let's refactor this. Let's put it into a probably a local function in this case. Call it setup menu. Turns a menu. Good. I'll here. I'll pull this out as well. Refactor this, and we'll say maybe run program loop. There we go. So there, we got us a little more refactored. So now the main program here is trivial. So we do a setup, and we say welcome. Then we grab our menu. I should move that in the run program loop. We set up the menu, run the program, say goodbye, and we're done. So that looks very, very, like there's not a lot to that. Pretty simple to read through. So let's come down here and let's go ahead and set these up. So one thing we're going to need is we'll actually need one more top here, so we'll pass in two things here. We need a convention class, so convention registration, because that's how we're going to handle setting up the different operations. So yeah, we maybe are ready to start with that. So let's go ahead and do so. So let's do a new method, new class. Let's clean up just a little bit. We're going to add another folder instead. Let's say models, then another one for I'm trying to think of the correct terminology here. I want to say controller, but I don't feel like that's correct. Models and simulation. That may not be the correct terminology, but that's what we're going to use. So in here, let's add a convention registration. Yes. That'll be a public class convention registration. There we go. So this is going to have a couple methods to first let's add a public void run simulation. This will be the main logic of the program. We will have a Maybe all. Yeah, we may. The rest of them may be properties, actually. Yeah, let's do some properties. So we need a prop, number of registrants. Another one for hours of operation. Another one for number of windows. One more for expected registration duration. All right. I think that's all we need. That a constructor. We'll work on it in a second. Yeah, I think that's what we need. Go ahead and set these up over here then. So up here, we'll need two. Something like that. Spacing properly, let's name space. Notice that puts it in a separate one, but all we need to do is control dot here and just say using the simulation. There we go. Okay. So now we need to pass that in here. So that menu and registration. Each one of these will just do what it says. So dot number of registrants equals get regi. We'll do something like that. We'll write the methods here in just a second. That's a little long. Let's rename this. Let's say little shorter, and I don't think we lose a lot from that. Dot hours of operation equals get hours of operation. The reason we're breaking all these out into their own methods is that it's going to be very similar code, but there's going to be slight differences. So we're going to learn something new today, I think, if I can get there. Get number of windows. And this one's run simulation. We may have to make some adjustments, I'm not sure yet. So right now, it's going to give us one run and then we're done. So what we need to do here is we need to do I don't like that because I don't like using the parameter like this. So we'll do we'll make use of a copy constructor, so we'll need to do that. We'll say, let's go back to the original. It's not available right now, but we'll fix that. But here we reset it with a new one. We're here. Add a constructor now. Public, mention registration. So here we'll just copy everything within it. One, two, three. There we go. Now we've got us a little copy constructor. Let's add these methods. Now we need well, all right. So these we're going to make use of another helper method. And in fact, we're going to make use of two. First things first, let's add a static, and here's something I don't think we've seen yet. So we're going to write the method first, then we'll explain it. Out and var result. Let's say int here because that's what we're doing. And we'll copy this and we'll do double because that's the other value we're going to need. Here, let's just do like this, and we'll do this. All right. So this is using some kind of new syntax we haven't seen here, putting something in parentheses. This is what's called a tuple. Basically, what it lets you do is return two things at once. Or in the past, there wasn't really a way to do this. Instead you would create maybe a class or something and return it. For something simple like this, though, this can work all right. So basically we're treating it as a way to get two items back for now. We'll work with it here in just a second. What this is doing is we're taking an input, we're trying to parse that input out as a string, returning bool if it's val, we're returning the boolean for the try parse, and then the integer we get back. Same thing for the double, just a double instead of. So we're treating this as a little helper method for try parse, and it's using a new value here. That's because of what we're going to do next. We're going to add another helper. Static t. We're going to do it generically. Get validated input t. String prompt. Now we're going to see something we've definitely not seen before. Success t value parser. We're going to do another one of them. Validator and string error message. That is a mouthful. In fact, it doesn't even fit. So let's look at this. So it's a method, a generic method, type t. We'll pass in the type. So it takes a string prompt and then another string at the end of error. Then takes these function things. If that does it. encapsulates a method that has one parameter and returns the value of the type specified by the second value. This one has one parameter and specifies by the second value. So what this is doing is it's allowing you to pass a method, function, just the word for method in this case. So you're passing in some kind of method. We're saying the method has a signature of it takes in a string and it returns a success or a t. Where t is going to look something like this: boolean int, boolean double, boolean, and then t, whatever type t is. And saying that's what type we get back out of it. And there's a validator here that takes in a t, so it's another method, takes in whatever type it is, so double or int, returns a boolean. So we're using that to say, okay, did it succeed? We're going to say, give us a string input. We're going to say, give us a string input. We're going to parse it with this function, whatever you give us. We're going to validate it with this function, which you also give us, and then we're going to do an error message. And this looks more complicated than it really is. We're going to build it up here, and we'll see how we use it. Let's start with the first step, which is getting the user input. We added the getLine from keyboard method before, and it takes a prompt. And we'll just pass this prompt in. While true, true, really true. All right. So here's one of the cases I'm going to use a var. Success parsed value. So if success and validator return parsed value, else I think I wanted to change the color of this line. Error message. We need one more helper. Probably should make that into a do while loop. Let's see. Let's get this other helper real quick. We'll do it as a static void clear input, clear invalid input. We'll say press a key, console.clear. I think we're going to make this red, so we'll say console.foreground color equals menu.error color. And then we'll do the reverse here afterwards and reset the color back to primary. There we go. So once again, quite a mouthful. So this is saying, okay, get this input from this prompt. So whatever we tell them prompt, we get the input. Then we pass it into the parser method. Parser method is this. The method that takes in a string, so we pass it in a string, and it returns a success and a value. We're calling it parse value. So here, this represents a tuple with two components. So we're breaking it up into the two components. So get this. What we could do instead of this, we could say something like this. We could say value. Then we have to do something like this, though. Value.item. We can't even do that. Maybe we have to do this. Bool t. How can we do value dot? Yeah, there we go. So there we could do something like that instead, and then you do value dot item 2. Value dot item 2. So that's the equivalent to what we just did there, but I think the other way is clearer. So if we go back, oops, too far. This is saying, okay, here's us a value, and it's a tuple of these two values. This lets us refer to both of these by whatever name we give it, success and parsed value. I think that's a little clearer in my opinion. So we get those two values, and then we say, okay, if success is true and validator takes in whatever type it was, type T, and it returns us a bool as well. So if that and that is true, then we just return. Else it's an error, and we print out the error message. And we try again. So that's pretty complex. So let's look at an example. That lets this method look more like this. So we'll start with the top one. It was static int get expected registrations. Yeah. All right, so this is returning an int. So all we have to do now is do get validated input. Let's do this all on, each one of these lines is going to be big, so we'll do them on its own line. So let's do /n/t. How many registrants are expected to be served in a day? Add a space there. So there's just a prompt. So a function. What's a function? It's pretty much any method. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this try parse int here. Pass that in. Is that valid? It looks like it accepted it. So let's keep going. So here we're going to use something called a lambda function. Sometimes called an anonymous function. We're saying I less than 0 and I less than or equal to, I'm going to say the building can't hold too many people, so we'll do that, but we're not going to use that big of a limit. Must be a whole number between 1 and return. So this is saying it takes the two functions, the two methods in the middle. So the first one we're saying, okay, pass this method. Notice I don't tell it what it is. I just give it the name. The other one's called a lambda expression, but it's an anonymous function. It's saying, I'm trying to explain it. Saying for whatever function this is, we take in I and we return whatever value this. In this case, we're saying check if I is great. It almost looked nice there. Just a second. What it's saying is I is greater than 0 and less than 1 million. Return true, else return false. So it's taking in I, which is an int, returning false. So that's just giving us a way to do some validation. And you can see that doesn't look like it saved us much typing yet. However, it's coming because we've done that once. We have some other methods up here. What if we have this method? Static int get hours of operation. It so happens we have a method here that already does all this. We have a try parse int method already, so we can just use that. We do have to do our own validator here, but again, we can use the lambda function. So 0 and I must be less than 24 because there's less than 24 hours of the day. The value must be a whole number between 1 and 24. There we go. So there, again, still not, probably haven't made up for all the code we've copied, but at this point, it's very close. So otherwise, we would have had to have put this in both of these methods. Now by using the function parameters, we're able to reduce that each time. There's still some ambiguity, but it makes it really easy to pass things. And again, this is the name. We're not passing in any parameters. So one thing to keep in mind. Do a third one. So this is a static int guy. Here we will return get validated input. Simulated. So it's another int. And notice we haven't actually used double, so double could be one that we just don't care about. There we go. This one, we're just saying it's got to be a positive number, basically. And the last value is a double up here. Copy the name. Static double is okay, so now we can see something neat with the functionality here. Even though this is a double, we don't have to really do much different. We'll do it like this. Getting long, so let's say we might could say a default value, but we're not going to. We'll say try parse double. So this would be whatever we know a minimum is. So I'm going to say the minimum is going to be 1.5 minutes. We know that you can't get it done faster than that. Maybe we can, but we're going to say we can't. Let's do a minute. We'll just say 1. We'll say we can't get the registration done in under a minute. What this has really let us do is, again, that looks like a lot of code, but each one of these would have the same checks here. All this would be the same. The static doubles the one special case. The static doubles the special case, but that's letting us do the same thing a bunch of times, and we're doing it called a principle called dry. don't repeat yourself. So we're not repeating yourselves. Each one of these is entirely different, like the try parse end. Maybe we could do something there, but I would argue that at this point we're strongly in the diminishing. I would argue that this is actually nice and a good show to at least show you this feature. So just know you've seen it and look it up. Look for a func. So that's C Sharp's way of passing methods around. So you can pass around a method and use it somewhere else, and they can be used to great effect sometimes. It can also be very hard to follow sometimes, so you've got to keep that in mind. In this case, I think that's a good use though, so we'll keep it for now. So I think that's roughly the loop. So let's do add some run simulation here that just we'll just write out the different parameters. Let's see what this does. This should let us put in some information here. Got to rebuild. Right, there we go. All right. So let's say 1. We'll set the registrations. How many do we expect? We'll say 1,000. 2. It'll be open for not 8 hours. 8 hours. Number of windows, 7. Duration, we'll say 5 minutes. Run the simulation. We need to break there at the end. Let's do here. Press a key. Try that again. Maybe we should set some default values to make it easier to test. 1, 1,000, 2, 8 hours, 3, 7, 4, 5 minutes, and then run. There we go. So there we're successfully taking in parameters, and they do handle negatives if we do registrations negative 1,000. Say 1 million, so let's say 2 million. Good. Does it take 1 million? It does. Does reset. Good. See, maybe we should set some minimums. Default value. So let's go over here. Close out the menu. All right, so let's set some minimums. Let's say we normally do events with 1,000 members that are open for 8 hours with, what did I say, 7 windows with a 5-minute duration. We'll use that and we'll say that's default. So let's see if we actually have defaults now. Look, we do. So if we don't specify something, like say we expect 100,000 people, and we have windows. We have a lot more windows. Let's say 35. Now if we run it, now those are set, but the others are still in default. So I think that's actually pretty good. Maybe we should add that to the messages here, though. I don't want it's capitalized either. Yeah, let's do this like this. Let's make it a little nicer. Let's do int default number of registrants. So we're doing this to make it easier to keep track of. Const int hours of operation equals 8. Oh. Leave that. And finally, public const double default registration. Technically, we can leave off the 0.0. I'm going to leave it in, though, but we could leave it off. There we got defaults. Now we can come up here and we can say this number. Hours of operation default. Number of windows, and the last one here. This one. Those are really long. I may want to adjust those a little shorter, but we'll keep it at that, and we'll add colons. So now if we pick 6 and retry, now we should see our defaults. Yeah. So yeah, I think I like that. We don't need to pass in the convention because these are constants, so they act like they're static. They're based on the class, not the individual objects. The reason they go that route is then they only get copied into memory one time, so we only get to see them once. Yeah, there we go. I think that's a pretty good stopping point. So there we've pretty much finished up the UI portion. So next lesson we will really begin looking at the simulation. So in this one we've learned quite a bit of new things. We've seen got out our menu here and we did some cleanup. Then we looked at these methods. These make use of something new called a function of t. Like I said, this is a really long name, but it can be really useful if used properly. So this is saying this is a way to pass in a function or a method. We pass in a C# method here, and we it specifies what we're expected. We're passing in something that takes in a string and returns this thing. This is a tuple. Say that. This is a tuple that returns two values, success and value. And tuples, or the way I'm using them here and the way I see them used occasionally, is to be able to return multiple values like this. And it can be really nice to do that. You could also create some kind of class, but we're really only using it in here, so I don't see that as necessary, and I actually sort of like it looking like this. This lets us pass in a method that matches that description, string, and returns a tuple of tuple and d. And it lets us just call it down here. We do parser and pass in the user input, and it gives us what we expect out. And there's all kinds of, like, we have to actually make sure their types match. Like if we just return, here we're expecting this to be a return a bool. So here we're saying return 1, not implicitly convert int to bool. So the compiler knows how to do things like that. That can be really nice. Lets us control what we're passing in. Lets the compiler know what we're check it. It lets us control what we're doing, and here you can see we vary it. We can do different things, different levels of validation. You can sometimes use that to great effect, and I would say we'll see that in the future, very likely. Really, other than that, the rest of it was just cleanup. We cleaned up some of the program from last time and did a couple more extensions. We added the default values and such. The next lesson, we're going to really begin looking into the simulation, trying to fill it out, trying to keep on going. So we'll say at the end here, this has been Shadow Gaming. I'm bringing you episode 29 of Programming with Shadow, and I'm going to go ahead and stop here. So thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.